Okay, today our topic is about economic growth. We studied about what is meant by GDP and what is GNI, what is real GDP, nominal GDP. So today we will move on towards why it is important for a government to achieve economic growth and why is it necessary to know about what type of growth an economy is going to make. Clear? So economic growth means increase in the real GDP of a country over the period of time. In simple words, what I say, this is increase in real GDP of a country over the period of time, that is called economic growth. First of all, I say there are two things. One is called the volume of economic growth. Like if GDP in real terms has increased in the number of goods and services produced by a country in a given year, we say its volume has increased. For example, an economy size is $400 billion. Now, in the next year or in current year, it has produced the goods and services which are worth of more than $400 billion. So it means in real terms. So it means it has made an economic growth in volume. More goods and services have been produced by this country. Follow my point? So growth means when more goods and services are produced, that means more people are able to have access to these goods and services. So when they have more goods and services, their material welfare will increase. Material means, in other words, they have more goods and services to improve their living standard. Like more consumer goods have been produced, and if economy is producing more of capital goods as well, therefore in future their productive potential will also increase and they will be able to have more higher living standard in the future if that country is focusing more on the production of capital goods rather than consumer goods. So it depends upon the population size of the country. If a country is having more population size, then it has to allocate more of its resources in the production of consumer goods rather than the capital goods, because it involves an opportunity cost. What is the opportunity cost? Now, if it produces more capital goods, it has to face shortage of food items, basic necessities for such a huge population of the country. So that is an opportunity cost. Therefore, for the developing countries which are having more size of population, they have a hard choice to reallocate resources from the production of consumer goods towards the production of capital goods. They cannot do like this at present time. Okay, so growth means how many goods and services they have been produced. It is increase in real GDP of a country over the period of time. Country in a given time period, in a given year, you can say, like in one fiscal year, how many goods and services have been increased in a country at constant price level. Clear? So this is in volume. When more goods and services are produced, so it means it is going to have more well-being of the people. They can have more goods and services available for consumption purposes. Now this is the volume of growth. So this can be one of the macroeconomic objective of the government to achieve more economic growth. When more economic growth is there, it means national income will increase, more employment opportunities are created, and unemployment will also decrease if aggregate demand is increasing in the country. So unemployment level will also fall. Now another is called growth rate. Growth rate. This is in terms of percentage. We do not compare the economic performance of the countries on the basis of the volume of goods and services they have been produced. Okay? What I said, if we are going to compare two countries' performance, should we use the volume of goods and services which are produced? Like the size of Russian economy, Chinese economy, they are far greater than any other country in the region. Okay, like China's economy is the second largest economy. So if in terms of volume we see they are producing so many goods and services. Okay, if they are producing more in volume, so we cannot compare ourselves with that of Chinese economy or Russian economy. I see. So we compare the performance of the countries on the basis of growth rates. That is measured in terms of percentage. Like if one economy, Pakistan economy is growing by 5.8%, below 6% of its total volume, now it has increased in real terms by 5.8%. Another country which is having larger size of the economy, it has grown by 2%. Any other country, you can say China, that has grown up by 2%. So can we say in terms of volume, China has produced more goods and services. Because if that economy is of $16 trillion, so $16 trillion is having 2% increase. So in volume they are having a huge volume of goods and services which are produced. They are asked. But in terms of percentages, we have performed better than China because our economic growth rate is higher than China. These are not the exact values, but these are for the sake of understanding. So we compare economic growth of the countries on the basis of percentages rather than on the basis of volume. Clear? If growth rate is negative growth rate means now less goods and services have been produced than the previous time period. So if consecutively there are 2 quarters of a year in which a country has shown a negative economic growth rate, then we say this country is in recession and it is facing a problem of unemployment within its economy.
So 2 years.
2 quarters. One year is divided into 4 quarters and each is having 3 months. If 2 consecutive quarters of any economic fiscal year, a country is showing negative economic growth, then we say it is in the recession and its economic growth has gone down and it is facing a problem of unemployment. Okay, so now if I say in the next year economy has grown by 4%, what do you mean by this thing? In the present year, if economy has grown by 5.8%, in the next year it is growing by 4%, do you think economic growth has gone down? No. Growth has increased, but the rate of growth has decreased. Rate of growth that has gone up, goods have increased in volume, but by less rate. And if there is a negative sign with the growth rate, then we say this is going to be a fall in number of goods and services which are produced by a country in a given time period. Clear? So these are the things about economic growth, its brief introduction. What do we mean by economic growth? Now come towards what types of economic growth can take place in a country. One type of economic growth, that is called actual economic growth, potential economic growth. One is called actual economic growth. Second is called potential economic growth. Potential economic growth. Third one is called inclusive economic growth. This is a new thing your book has added. Inclusive economic growth. And the last one is called sustainable economic growth. Sustainable economic growth. Alright? What is meant by actual economic growth? Actual means when economic growth is increasing due to increase in aggregate demand in the country. Okay? Actual economic growth means actual economic growth. If you remember the topic of PPC, remember it, in which we studied that PPC is showing us the maximum number of goods and services which are produced by a country by using all its resources. So when economy is operating below PPC, there is presence of unemployment. It is not fully utilizing its potential. Now, if economy moves towards PPC, towards point Y, so what is happening? Now country is utilizing its existing resources to grow. This is called actual economic growth. How can you say? In the form of the diagram of aggregate demand and supply, real GDP it is. Now here I am taking price level, and this is the long run aggregate supply curve. This is what? Long run aggregate supply curve. Now aggregate demand has increased for the country. What has increased? Aggregate demand, and now in the real terms, the real GDP that has increased. So this is called actual economic growth, which is due to increase in aggregate demand in the economy. Followed? So actual economic growth will take place by utilizing the existing resources of an economy which are already present, and now this country is going to use or employ those resources. So we say when economy moves from point X to Y, it is moving towards PPC. So it is using its presently available resources. So we say this is called actual economic growth. What it is? Actual economic growth. And what is potential economic growth? When the resources of an economy, they increase in quantity and quality. When quantity of resources and quality of resources both have increased, then the PPC will shift outward. What happens? PPC will have an outward shift. I am going to write over here potential economic growth. What is that? Potential economic growth. This is the second phase, potential economic growth. Now, the country's resources, they have been increased in quantity and quality. Therefore, the PPC will have an outward shift. What is that? When a PPC is going to have an outward shift due to increase in its potential, here I am taking consumer goods. This is the first PPC, now it has grown up. So this is called potential economic growth. When the resources, they have been increasing quantity and quality, both in all forms, like manpower has been increased, labor force, it is now more qualified and trained, and capital goods, they have also been increased, and at the same time we are having better fertility of land. So when PPC is shifting outward, it shows us what? Potential economic growth. How to show this potential economic growth? By using the aggregate supply curve. Okay, this is now we are having this long run aggregate supply curve, and aggregate demand is here. Now this long run aggregate supply curve is going to have an outward shift. Its potential has increased. Now long run aggregate supply curve will have a rightward shift, which is showing us the potential economic growth. Followed? Can we have both growths of the country at the same time? Both actual and potential have increased. Can I say previously economy was here, now it moves to the point Y, which is now below the new PPC. So here, now this is called now actual economic growth, its aggregate demand has increased, and at the same time, we see the potential of the country has also increased. So both actual and potential can take place simultaneously. Like the resources, they have also been increased, and aggregate demand in the country is also increasing. So over the period of time, I say now demand is here. So you see, along previous aggregate supply, prices were going to increase. But as the potential has increased, again price level will remain same. Clear? So both potential and actual growth can take place simultaneously. Clear? Now you can also learn about inclusive economic growth. Inclusive economic growth means what? Whatever the goods and services have been produced by a country, they should be fairly distributed among the people. Clear? Inclusive means fair distribution of income and the goods and the opportunities which all the people should enjoy. That is called inclusive economic growth. So whatever income is earned, it does not mean that the benefits of growth are only concentrated to the rich people and they are not going to be enjoyed by the poor people. If we have the distribution of these goods and services which are produced by a country, and we have fair distribution of goods and income and opportunities, so that economic growth is called inclusive economic growth. What it is? Inclusive, that includes all the people, all the population, rather than only rich or only poor. It includes everyone. The fair distribution of income and goods and services will take place. That is called inclusive economic growth. Now, what is called sustainable economic growth? Do we have economic growth in one area, like goods and services are increased, but at the same time we are having no social ties in the society or environmental degradation is taking place? So this sustainable economic growth means if we are, like at present time, we are having better quality of life, better goods and services which are produced, the upcoming generations should also have the availability of resources to grow, and they should also be having the same level of living standard or even higher level of. So this is called sustainability. Like this economic growth which is taking place now, it should sustain in the long run as well. And in three areas, sustainable economic growth is having three objectives. What are those objectives? One is called economic objectives. What are these objectives? Economic objectives means if we are using our present resources, like we have more doctors, more engineers, so we have to put in more of the workers, more of the children to become doctor and engineer in the future. So what we say, all the resources which we are using right now, if we are having more cutting of trees at present time to grow economically, we should plant trees as well for the upcoming generations. We should also put in economic resources in the production of capital goods as well. Like in future, more trained labor, more doctors, more engineers, more chartered accountants should also be available. That is called sustainability. And whatever the natural resources we are using, they must be conserved as well for the upcoming generation. Or if we are having deforestation to use wood as a use of economic growth, so we should also replant the trees in order to have better environmental conditions and better availability of wood for the upcoming generations. Okay, so economic objective is that whatever the resources we are utilizing to grow at present time, they should also be available for future generations. Okay, now the second objective is social objectives of sustainable economic growth. What do we mean by social objectives? Like if we also show an economic growth in its social objectives. Like there should not be any type of gender discrimination, there should not be any type of racial discriminations in order to get the benefits of economic growth, or religious discriminations or geographical discrimination. So all types of discriminations should be avoided in the society when we are showing economic growth. And the society members along with the economic growth should also be safe from the spread of diseases. They should be safe from HIV, AIDS, hepatitis, or you can say nowadays COVID-19. So social objectives are that when economy is growing along with the preservation of resources, it should also focus on the social objectives, that diseases should be avoided, people's social life should also be protected, and there should not be any type of discrimination in the society. You can say for the education of girls, there should be equal opportunities for boys and girls. There should be equal opportunities for the girls and boys to get employed in the employment sector. Now, the third objective of sustainable economic growth is environmental objectives. What are the environmental objectives? If we are having more and more economic growth, the negative externalities should be less and less. Clear? The social cost of production should be minimized. If we have more economic growth at the cost of our environmental damage, that economic growth will not be a sustainable one. If any country of the world is growing at the cost of environment, so in long run they will not be having a clean and healthy environment to live in. Okay, so all these objectives need to be addressed when we are going to show sustainable economic growth. Okay, so all these objectives, economic objectives, social objectives, and at the end, what it is, the environmental objectives should also be achieved in order to have sustainable economic growth. That's about the topic of economic growth. I think it's enough, and we will move on for the next topic tomorrow.
Sir,